So we've got this side surface here, top surface. We've created a blend, or a fillet, which is probably just going to be a rough surface. And I was saying that this is probably going to have to be manually modified, because if we look at the complexity of that, it's 18 spans. On a fillet, that may not be the end of the world, but I want to simplify that anyway, and it's just to give us a guide as to where those edges might be. And then we've got these other bits and pieces. So we've got a surface in here and a surface in there which connect up. So let me just go and just double check that is the case. So we've got G2 continuity between those. So that's all flowing together. So the problem area is this bit here. How do we get all of this to join up? And then we've got that surface going around there. And again, it's always worth, especially when you come back after a while, just go and check whether everything joins up. And for some reason that doesn't quite join up, which I hadn't spotted. So it'd be worth just aligning that. It's only a small amount, 0.03, but it's as well to do it now rather than later. So I'll put partial on, position influence of 0 on, and that will then change that, of course. So let's just see if I can change the position influence a little bit. Sometimes a little tiny change to position influence will have an effect. So if I take it all the way to 1, then it fixes it. It doesn't really move the CVs very much, so I'm going to stick with that. And then this surface here, unfortunately, we have to align that way. Again, the gap is tiny, so I'm just wondering whether we can just align that. It's going to be partial again, and just try G0. I'm just going to try G0 because we were so close that it makes me wonder whether if I just look at the curvature, it's going to be okay. So I haven't even aligned that in curvature, but because the gap was so small, all I've done is close the gap, and it's actually got the curvature back. So worth doing, because otherwise I'll come across this edge later on and then find there's a problem with it. And in that case, it was much easier than I expected. Thank goodness. Right, so now we want to do this area. So I think this is another area where we could use markup. Really would be useful to see what we're doing here, and trying to get my head round how this is all going to flow together. So if we go into markup, and I'll change the color to something we can easily see. So my thinking is that we've got this edge in here, which is obvious that this is what we want to do. So I'm using Control-Alt there, which is nice to give us that nice smooth curve there. And then up here, obviously this just stops at the minute and doesn't do anything. And I'm just wondering what this is. I think this is just a curve that I left behind. So let's get rid of that, because that's very misleading. And so we'll just go and do a line here. So I think what I want to do here is put a line in here that just goes along there. So that's the edge of that blend there, continued into this point here. So we'll end up with an edge on this end here. Now this is, I've said before that we want a bit of a surface coming around this way, so maybe I should do a different color there, to be honest. So I actually want a surface that comes around this way as well. Drawn so badly. Oh, undo that. Let's try that again, like that. So something like that. That's going to go across all of this, and then of course this is all going to crash together here. Let's go back to red. So we've got the edge of our blend coming up here, and then it's what we do at this point here. So I think what we need to do is we need to, and I'm not sure whether this will need to flow in or not, but it's always best if these edges flow. So in other words, that blue is continuous across here and the red goes continuously across there. I've made it green, but so we end up with a surface in here. I know I'm using all sorts of different colors here, but there'll be a surface in there, four-sided surface. And then around here, there'll be probably a number of four-sided surfaces to get this in, but they'll be coming around like that. It may be one surface, but probably unlikely, but it'll probably end up about you know, 2 or 3 surfaces there, going over the blend, and probably not making that too clear, but I think the blend will, and again, I don't know how this is quite going to work out, whether this should feather into to this end or whether we should just cross over, but somewhere this blend surface will come through here. It goes out into space like we've got, and then I'll have to cut it off here. So this point here, I don't know, you know, ideally this should flow into here, but it may not be possible to get all of those lines to come together. The end of this blend maybe around here. So this is going to be lying underneath everything, if that makes any sense at all. It's a little bit tricky to see, but it's the thing is with this drawing, when you're doing the drawing, of course you get it in your head, it helps your own head, but it's not always, you know, communicating it clearly to other people isn't usually necessary when it's your own work. But the red surface in there, I think that'll be the surface in there. So if I maybe shade that in, and that will be trimmed out to the blue line, and then there'll be another surface down there. So those will be lying underneath it, and we have this sort of fan-shaped set of surfaces going around there. So it'll actually end up quite simple, believe it or not, I think, if I get this right. All right, then let's start putting that in then. So I'm finding the markup is actually really useful. So let's first of all, so I'm going to create this edge for the fan, these fan surfaces that go around this way. So I'm going to start off with this edge here. So I'm going to go and duplicate that, and I've got interactive off, which makes a change because usually I've got that left on and I have to switch it off. And then we want to offset that. So we can go and offset that just somewhere out there. That's far too much. Let's take that back again. So if I go into this menu, I can use Alt just to bring that back down. So I want a curve that's going to go from here around to here somewhere. And obviously that's not quite where I want it to be. Let me just be a little bit more careful about my layers here. So we'll stick that in one of the curved layers here. I should also bring up some of these other layers. So I've got body 1, which I think was that old surface that I had. So I had that surface in there before. Just bring that back in. I'm just going to bring these up so that we can, I'm just using the left mouse button here to just bring them all together so I can see them a bit clearer. So this curve here, let me just go into meshes and make that more transparent so we can see more clearly. Also, I'm going to take all of the CVs off, and I'm just going to bring that one in here. So let's go and trim that curve here. So I want to get that trimmed to this point here, and then also trimmed to this edge here. Now I think this needs to be bigger, like we had before. I sort of came to the conclusion it needs to be somewhere like that. So let's go and pick that curve, and we can put a pivot point on that end, and then just scale it non-proportionally until it's, I'll probably make it a little bit bigger than that old surface. Now this curve at the moment is just pretty much two-dimensional. It's not in the right spot, and I want this edge to come up here so that when we extend this through, we're going to end up at pretty much the same point. So I can do that by just, you know, I could just put the CVs in the right place. But another way that we could do this is if I go and make a copy of this surface. So I'm just doing Control-C, Control-V, and I'm going to extend that backwards. So we've got that surface and that surface, doesn't matter which one I pick, just want to extend that backwards. I want to take that to a point up here. So I've still got the other surface in there. This is just for construction, but it gives me something that I can attach this to or align it to. So if I go into Object Edit, Align, I'm going to put, I'll put G2 on, but it doesn't really need to be G2 as such. But if I align that to there, make sure it's on the end so that we've just got the 1 arrow, not 2 arrows, and put history on. That just gives me a way of hanging that onto some geometry. And the beauty of this edge is it's effectively an isopalm of this original surface. So I know that if I keep this curve coming into an isopalm, then we stand a much better chance of being able to align the surface once we put it in. The other thing is, because I've got history on there, and I could put blend on there, but I'm not going to bother because it's not necessary. I'm going to move these CVs manually. If I start to pull that across to where I want it to be, then the curve updates. So it's quite a nice technique to be able to do that. I mean, there's other ways of doing this, of course, but that's just the first thing that occurred to me. So I want this point is going to be where this curve's going to come in, and I'm going to change that curve, tidy it up. So that'll also come in to the same ISO palm of the original surface there. So that we can get rid of that surface now. And then we want to modify these CVs. So they're clearly going to be something more like this in that view. So these are very three-dimensional. Ultimately, they need to be sitting on this surface here. This point here is another one that needs to be precisely on the edge. So if I go into side view there, and I'm just going to move it onto that edge, and you can see it picks up that intersect point where it was, which is very handy. And so we've now got that precisely on that edge there. Now we need this curve to be, ideally it needs to sit on this surface, and it needs to sit on that blend somehow. What I could do, let's have a look and see whether we can do this. So I'm just going to rough this in just to help the process. If I go into trim, project in the Y direction, and I'm going to just very roughly trim this. I think I can get away with it. Oh no, I can't. No, because I've got a curve going from there at the minute. So I created that curve last time. I'm going to take the history off it, and then we'll put in another curve here. So sometimes it's just useful to rough stuff in, and then knowing that I'm going to delete it. So I've just got that curve there, and then I'm hopefully going to be able to trim that curve back to this curve here. And then if I go back into surface edit and do a trim with project on, that curve and that curve, now I'm getting the green dots there, so I can tell it's going to trim. So I'm only doing that. The reason I'm doing that is because I want to be able to measure the distance between, so I've got curve to surface here, between that curve and these surfaces. Because if I didn't trim it, then it would be a bit messy, and I could have done it, of course. But so let's pick those locators, and then if we go into the information window, we can change the comb step to be something much tighter. So this is just the number of steps we're getting. I'm not going to try and get this 100% accurate. It's just to give us it just allows us to rough it in, and then we can, if we wanted to put this comb scale up, let's make that 10. At the minute, it doesn't need to be 10 for the distances we're talking about, but I'll make it 10, and then we can maybe get rid of that curve, I think, and then we can just pull and push these CVs around to roughly get this curve in the right place. It will be very rough. So I'm putting them in the Y direction, maybe in the Z direction as well. That one probably in the Z. So something like that. So it's very rough. It doesn't need to be accurate, because when we put the surface in, we can then get everything to align anyway. So let's get rid of those locators. Now, if we go back to our plan that we had, for what it's worth, this one, so I can go and have a look at that. So I wanted this to come up. This is where everything comes together. So we've got a line coming off here to create that little surface in there, and there's going to be another line going that way and one going that way, so it's quite complicated. So let's just have a look at that in side view. I know I just put locators on and then I'm now changing it, but that's fine. So I just want to make that a nice shape in there. So I'm going to try and create a bit of a surface in here. This edge shape is okay. Let's go and, ideally these surfaces ought to all come together at 90 degrees, but it's not always possible to do that. If the edges flow like this, so this one goes across this way, and we get an edge going, well, maybe that won't flow, but no, I will make it flow. I'll make it at least tangency into this edge here, so we end up with an edge here. And so I'm going to go into creating a curve here, so I can snap to that point there. I'll snap to the edge there and go across there, and then I'm going to make that degree 2. So I'm just going to, it's enough just to have it tanned in, to have it G1 across here. So let's go into Object Edit, and we're going to align that into this edge here. So I've got to think what this surface is going to look like. Does that look sensible? It looks okay. This edge actually is coming in at 90 degrees here, which is that's ideal. So we've got 4 sides there. We can create a surface in there. So we might as well just do that. And these will all be, they're just curves. Now the question is, does that join up? No, it doesn't, of course. So it effectively tells you that that doesn't join up. That doesn't join up, of course, because I haven't projected that onto that surface. So I need to project that on in order for a square to work. It's got to pick up on these have all got to join up at the corners, and this one joins up, but this one doesn't, because I haven't projected it onto the side surface. We could do that. Actually, a quicker way of doing it is actually we don't need, when you do a square, you don't actually need to pick up on the curves. You can just do this. You can actually just pick up on, like if I went up here and just picked up grid points, I can actually do that. So I can just put in 4 corner points. I don't actually need curves, strangely enough. So I can just pick up on, not that. Let's take the grid off. Why is it not picking up on the corner? Pick up on that curve. For some reason, I'm having to pick the curve and then slide it along to the end, but it doesn't matter. Maybe, yeah, I don't know why that is. And then across here, so I can then drag that along until it, don't know whether it'll snap to there, no, but it doesn't matter. It's just to get something in. And then we can just use a line on all of those sides. Of course, a line's going to, it's not going to be actually on that curve. So maybe this wasn't a great idea, but it's just to show you that you can create a square sometimes where it doesn't want to create a square because it's saying the corners aren't aligned properly. So I've got partial on there. It's not 100%, but it's 0.001. I'll put blend on. And with blend, I'm just going to put in 2 rows, and then I'm going to put blend factor of 1 on, so it just blends equally across that surface there. And I'll increase the degree the other way, that way. Take history off, because if I take history off, then I can apply the same thing on this side. Now this one, we know that curve isn't actually on that surface, and so the position doesn't really matter, because I'm going to have to then align it to the surface underneath. This edge is sort of straight anyway, so we should be able to get away with that. And then we'd do that on this one. This one with blend, we should, strictly speaking, make that 3, so it affects all of that lot. Now on this edge, we've aligned it to the curve, not the surface. So I want to get rid of that locator, and then we can align that now in G2 project in the Y direction. So I'm going to align that to this surface here, and I'll take blending off because we got G2 on, so it's going to affect those 2 holes anyway. This deviation here doesn't matter again, because that was just a curve that I invented which doesn't align to anything. So the important thing is getting this to actually be aligned properly here. So let's make that degree 5. So that's now aligned. And then let's start working across here. So I think what we should also do then is to work on this blend surface. I've said that it's a very high number of spans. It's far too many spans really for what we're trying to do. Down here I've got this curve, which is what I wanted to do with this bottom edge, and so I'm going to just extend this back first of all to that end point, because we'll build that in later. And then we can also, the other thing I want to do is just untrim this. So I've got untrim on the U key, by the way. So we can get rid of those curves on surface. That one's okay. It's just this one, because it's come from a complicated surface there. I don't really want that. We need to split this at this point, so I'm going to detach that. So we're going to pick that and then pick that corner of that surface there. So like I said, on this area here, ideally all of these curves ought to flow into each other, and this one's coming off at quite an angle. You can sometimes get away with that, and I think it's just a question of trying it out and seeing whether we do or not. You know, it might be that we can get away with, it might be that this gives us a problem in terms of getting things to align. Maybe we'll have to have a line that maybe not flows completely in terms of G1 going into that edge. You know, if we made a line going across that way, we end up with rather an extreme shape here. We end up with a corner there, which is quite tight. It may be that we just put a line in that goes across that way, that's halfway between the ideal and this situation. But I think for now we're just going to go with what we've got. This surface, like I say, is too complicated in my opinion. It's got 8 spans in it, so let's just try and reduce that, see how far we can go down. If we get it down to 1 span, that'd be ideal. I'm just going to go with 1 span. The CVs have all behaved themselves nicely. When we start to align this, of course, we'll find out whether we can get away with 1 span or not. So let's go into Object Edit, and we're going to do Object in G2 in the Y direction into that surface there, and it says Align failed with error 3. And so why is that? It's because I picked that edge and that's the wrong edge. So let's revert that. So I picked that blend. It's not the one I wanted. It's that one there. So you can see actually we're pretty close, even with 1 span, 0.003 in terms of gap. So let's increase the degree going along that way, and degree 6 has done it, which is great, because it just keeps it all nice and simple. In the top view, we want to have a look at this edge here. So we want this edge to come into the same point as this green line. So let's have a look and see how close we are in terms of sections through everything. So we've got the X sections here. So if we're very close to these sections, then that means that we can change this edge without having too much of an effect. And it looks to me as though we could pull that edge outboard a little bit to be more consistent with the green edge without having too much effect, because pretty much from there, if I draw a straight line from there, it looks like we might get away with that. So let's go and put in a line from here. We'll take it up to here. It's actually it's almost a straight line. I'm going to make that degree 3, and then I'm going to take these off. I'm going to then align that. So I want this to come in at the same angle as here. And of course it goes around the wrong way because it's picking up on the end there. So I'll do that with it. And then on this one, I need to put history on, in fact, on that one there, history onto that edge. And that comes up to that point. So I think this point is probably needs a little bit of work on it. Let's just align that to there. Swing that around the other way, because that's S-ing. I mean, we could move that green line across, to be honest. I think that might be a better solution to do that, and then work on that as well. Because the trouble is, if we bring this too far this way, then we will have a problem trying to get it to align and to stay on the data. So if we push it that way, that's probably a better solution. It's just I was a bit reluctant to do that, having done what I've done here. So let's go into here. So I'll do my trick again of copying that, and then we can extend that backwards. I'm going to take it a little bit further this time, and then I'm going to align this with history on. So I think I made it G2 before, this one into here. The G2 of curves doesn't really, this edge is, when you've got the surfaces in, you won't see that edge. It doesn't really exist, in a sense that whether that's G2, G3 or G1 really doesn't matter in terms of the alignment of the surfaces. It's something that's invisible really once you've got your surfaces in. So fortunately I've got history on there, which is nice, because I can then go and extend this back this way a bit, and we can just see where that curve comes to. And maybe if you really want to go to town on it, we can have a look at that, and that looks okay. I think that's okay. If it's A class, I'll probably be shifting this a little bit that way, and I probably will do because I can't help myself. So we'll leave that surface in there. Just need to remember that it's there. And obviously this has changed things a little bit. It means our curve is slightly changed down here, but it doesn't matter. We've got a surface there we can use anyway. So in fact, that curve, if we wanted to, we should actually just trim that a little bit. So let's just trim that. It says it's got history on, which we know. So I'll trim it to that. Now that doesn't trim to that, so let's trim to that edge because it doesn't overlap that. That's better. And then we can align that at this end. And I'll leave G2 on, see what that gives us. So this hasn't quite picked up the end. You can see there's two arrows there, so I need to drag that back, make sure it picks up that end. So that at least, we know that curve is now joined up on both ends. Now this surface here, I'm just going to save this because we've done quite a bit of work now. This surface here is obviously, that's what the fillet function gave us, and it's not in the right place at the minute. So let's project this curve, this top curve, up in Z. First, we're going to just have a look at it because the CVs don't look good. They're too unequally spaced there. So if I query edit that, we've still got query edit that again. Right. Query edit that curve. Maybe I've lost the alignment. I can't really tell. I don't know why it's. So let's go into G1 history. I'll align that into there. Yeah, so I've lost the alignment. Doesn't matter. So I'm just going to make those spacings of CVs slightly more equal. That'll be a better result. And then we're going to just project that in Z onto this surface here. So let's go and project curve Z, that surface. And it says 0.111, the deviation. If we go into create history, then what we can do there, so I've got match original, so it's keeping the spacing of the CVs. If you didn't care about that, then you can just do curve fit, and that can give you a better result, but it depends then on the degree you put in, but sometimes you find that the CVs are all over the place. So actually that's degree 4. Let's just have a look and see what that looks like. So the projected one is that one. Actually that looks perfectly fine, but sometimes it will give you very bad CVs there. So because we've got history on, I should be able to query edit that projected curve and I'll just bump it up to 6, because then we know it's 100% accurate there. And then we can go into pick curves, and you can see from the names which one's which. So that's the original one. I can also see by the number of CVs, of course, but so we've got that curve in there. It's always better if you're building a surface from a projected curve to use to actually project a curve and not curve on surface. Or usually, sometimes you can get away with curve on surface, but a lot of the time it's better to have a curve. It's you've got more control in the sense that you can see the CVs. So this surface here, too complicated again. it's 10 spans. So let's make that 1. We can. That looks absolutely fine. And then what we can do with that is we want to obviously align it to that curve. It's only going to be G0. We actually, I mean, I've drawn this curve all the way to the end, and this can be a problem area. That if we've got this coming down, tapering down to nothing, it can be a bit of a problem. That sometimes you're better off not going all the way to the end. You go slightly further back and then come off at a very, very slight angle. Or the other thing that we might end up doing, because the problem is when I trim this, if I look in there and really squish this up here, because these come together, you sometimes find they may even cross over, but you'll find that when you trim this, the end of the trim surface may only come to here and not to here, and then you try and align this to that surface and it keeps snapping to the wrong point. So the usual one trick is to, I take the CVs off this curve here. One trick is to actually break the tangency here and make this a slight angle between the two. That's what I'm going to do here, because I know this is going to be a problem. So let's delete the history. So let's go into delete construction history, and then I'm going to pick that point and I'm just going to move it across, not that way. I'm going to move it. I just wonder what settings I've got. Let's just check my general preferences, modeling. Yeah, I've got those correct. So I just want to move that in the Y direction slightly. Now, of course, that was a projected curve, and also it's gone a slightly wrong. So let's move that point and as well, just to make that curve a bit nicer. So now you can see there's a little bit of a gap, or you could see until I've moved out of the view. Okay. Go back in the top view. So if we look at that in detail, you can see that I've opened up the angle there a little bit, and that will help when we trim the surface that we're going to create. We won't have the alignment problems that we have otherwise. Now you can see I've made a big mistake there and somehow moved that in the Z direction. I think I was slightly out of view or something. I don't know what I did there, but it doesn't matter, because we know in top view it looks absolutely fine. So we can just reproject that on. So let's go back into reproject, and this time I will use match original because I want to keep that spacing of CVs the same, and it says 0.001. If you've got history on and you're not happy with that, you can just go and pick the original curve there. I might as well make it 7 and then just update it, and the projected one of course updates and says maximum 0 now. So we can do that. So this surface here, what I'm going to do with this is I could rail from here, I guess, across there. The other way to do this would be to go into object edit. I like this technique, maybe not in, not always in this area, but if you go and align that to that edge, that gives us that edge where we want. But we can, if we put blending on, then we can take all of the other holes with us, drop the blend factor down to 0, and you've effectively moved this into a new position. The gap is 0.009, and that's because we haven't got enough degree. We've got to have the same degree as the curve, of course, to get that to align. So that's got that in position. It's only a curve, and so we need to then align that in curvature into the main surface there. The other thing is this edge here. So let's go and align that. I'm just going to do it as G1 to start with. So we're going to break the history. Now we want to take the history off because we're going to be aligning on multiple edges here. So we want to make sure that the history is off, otherwise it'll go all over the place. And we've got edge on there, so it's pulled it away from the curve. I'm not going to worry too much about that because we're going to have to align it to the surface anyway. The other thing that I haven't checked, of course, is whether this is aligned, and which I should have done. So let's go G2 project in the Z, this one into here. So that's not aligned, and it's not surprising considering we've dropped the degree and the spans so much. So why not make that degree 7 as well? And there it's worked now. So we've got, in fact, it's made that tangent. Yeah, the tangent is still there. This one is just the difference between the curve and the edge of the surface there. So I want to get rid of that locator. There's no curve on surface there because we haven't projected it yet. We've only got projected curve, so let's go and align that. Going to be G2 project Z, this one into here, and fortunately it's gone straight in, which is absolutely fantastic. Now this surface, I'm just going to save this. This surface, because we're going to be building this surface on top of it between the green lines, and it must go into this edge. If we don't, we've got to make sure that this edge actually also aligns into this main block, because otherwise, when we try and build this green over the top of it, we're going to have a problem here. This is all going to be, the conditions going to be slightly different. We might get away with doing what we've got, but it's not ideal. We really ought to make sure that this blue edge goes into this surface here, which is turned green. So I'm going to just make that, assign that to a surface layer there. Now to make that align, obviously if it's that big and we're trying to align it here, it's not going to work very well. And it might be that we'll end up having to, well, I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll have a look at the sections again. Let's just have a look at these sections and see what this underlying surface is doing. So it's absolutely fine here. You can see those sections there. And then as we come up here, not surprisingly, it's nowhere. So we need to transition that into there. So there's quite a big change to make. Let's go and see what that does. If I'm just going to align it and see what happens. So hence I saved it before I did this. So we'll put edge on. We're going to make this G2 into here, and obviously it's a partial edge. It's going to end up with looking quite weird in terms of the CVs on this, and of course, I haven't put any blend on there yet. So let's put some blend on. I want the maximum blend on. So we want that much blend so that we're keeping this end as, we haven't actually got that as G2, but I need to make that G2. And then with this, when we're blending between one end and another, we always want the blend factor to be 1, or nearly always. So it's more of a transition, more of a gentle transition. I am going to go into this end and just go and align this. So this is not a partial edge, and it's also not blended. We don't want it blended, so we're doing that. Now I've tried to align that. I wanted to delete the curve on surface because you can see it's coming away, and actually the gap, it says it's 0.5, so it's quite a long way, and it's because we've done quite a major change on this end and then blended it. So this surface here, this is a you can see it's looking like it joins into this edge here, and it would probably make sense for us actually to split it in two, so that we can actually join that up. That would make some sense. So let's go and do that. So I'm going to just have a look. If I go into my locators and I'm going to go curve to curve here. So let's have a look at the distance between the two and scale that up. And if I go into the information window, just get an idea of how far away this is. So if I say the threshold, let's put in a comb step of 10. So some more, it gives us more spikes there. And we're putting a threshold of 1 mil. So up to there, it's about 1 mil, 2 mil, 3 mil. So it's only about 3 mil away at that point. So I think we just go with this, get rid of that, and split it somewhere. So this will come up into here. So we're going to go into Object Edit, Detach. Bearing in mind most of this is trimmed away, so it really doesn't matter really much what shape of this is. So maybe I'll take it to that point there. And then we're going to align that into this edge here. So let's go into align, G0, that edge into, and it's going to be a partial into this area here. Now it's come up with a completely crazy, well, I'd say it's completely crazy. It says position of 445 millimeters, and the reason is because I've detached this surface. It's now got confused about which edges to compare, so it's comparing that edge with that edge, which is of course nonsense. So I'll ignore that for the time being. I want this in position. I also want to put, and I've got position influence of 1 on, which has moved the CVs around quite a bit, which doesn't matter as long as I blend it back. You can see there's a bit of a kink now in those CVs. So if I put blending on, which I want anyway, and then I'll just blend that across. I might as well blend it all the way across there because we haven't got this aligned at the minute anyway. So something like that. The CVs could be, could be neater, but it doesn't really matter. Now, because I've detached this and it's shorter, there's a possibility that we could reduce the degree. So whenever you can reduce the degree, it's worth having a go, because why not? It just makes things simpler. So I've reduced it down to degree 4. It just means we've got fewer CVs to look at. If we needed to tidy those up, you've got far less to deal with, and it just helps the quality of your model. Otherwise, this degree you can get carried away with the degree going up and up and up, and never coming down. And the same with spans as well. It's always best to try and reduce those as much as possible. So yeah, most of this surface is going to be cut away. There's only going to be that tiny little bit left there. So this is all theoretical, really. But it does help when we build surfaces on the top of it. We might even find that we don't actually need to build that surface all the way around there. We might get away with just having this end surface in there, but time will tell. So this one here, I now need to align that. So I've got it aligned there and there perfectly. Now I'm going to align it by project in the Z direction. Don't want any blending on, and I want to align it in that direction. So we're very close. Let's increase the degree again. So I had to increase it slightly to get the tolerance within boundaries, but that's absolutely fine. And then we can now align this one. So this one's going to be edge. So you've got to be on your toes about which one to pick all of the time. Make sure that you don't project onto the edge and things like that. So this is going to be, you can see it does something a bit weird there, but again, most of this is trimmed away. So we're going to cover it up with another surface. So we're going to have that doing that. And then we want this one again. We could actually, at this point, we could reduce the degree because we detached this. So there's every reason to just have a look at reducing the degree. That's not aligned into anything at the minute. This end should be aligned, and hopefully still is. Let's have a look. G2 into there. Not quite. No, is that one? That one is, and that one is. Right. So we just need to align on this end. And I've got history off because that just can cause problems in these areas. So I've done that. It would be interesting just to have a look. Probably not very nice, but I don't know. Let's have a look at the sections first of all, see how we're doing. So we still seem to be on the sections pretty much. Now this, oh yeah, so this surface here, we haven't got a curve on surface here, but and we haven't aligned this bit either. So we want to get that in there. Let's get rid of that curve because that's just getting in the way now. And we're going to align this. G2 project in the Z, and that's all great because it's all curvature aligned on all sides. Because of where we picked this to be position aligned, then it's pulling that out. I don't know whether that's going to be a problem or not, but we'll find out when we do it. But it'd be worth actually just having a look at the highlights quickly. So we can, on an area like this where I haven't actually defined what I'm doing, quite often I'll just go and put a straight line in there, and then we can just go and do a trim. So let's go into trim, project in the Z direction, that one, and we just pick that one. And although that's not the actual edge that we want, of course, but it just means that I can then have a look at that, shade it up, and we'll take that out. We don't want that in there. We don't want to look at that. Now this is going to be a bit weird going through there, that's for sure. So if I put those ISO angle highlights on, horizontal, vertical, you can see it's all smooth. And if you think all of this is going to be cut away, then this sort of funny lump doesn't really matter. So that looks absolutely fine, I think. So I'm now going to save this. Let me just go and just check this. We got that, yeah. And then we just so worth checking these things again and again. So now what we want to do, I'm thinking that we probably don't need this. We don't need this surface going all the way up to here, because that's just repeating this surface really, and that surface is fine. So we could probably just bring this up to this point, to be honest. Doesn't even need to feather into the edge, and then we get rid of a potential problem with alignment. So we'll try that. Let's get rid of that curve. I don't want that curve. That's just going to interfere with things. Is there a curve there? There's a curve there as well. We don't need that. So in that view, so hopefully these points join up. This joins up, this joins up. What doesn't join up is this curve. So if we just rotate that around until we think that looks like a nice position for that curve, because that curve's not exactly on that surface, and then we just project that on. So let's go into project, and we'll match the originals, and we'll do it in the view. So as long as we make sure this is very accurate, and it says it's only 0.006, so let's try curve fit and see if we can make that more accurate. So there is 0.001. Let's make it degree 7. Strangely enough, it's gone up to 0.002, which is odd. Just me to take it down one level. Okay, no, it's thinking about it now. Again, it doesn't actually matter, because it doesn't matter that that's not 100%, because we're going to, first of all, going to get rid of that rebuild curve. That's the original one. I mean, I suppose what I should do is put that, I'll just put it into this layer here. I have no idea what's in that layer. It doesn't really actually matter. So let's get back into here. So I know this is not green, but it doesn't matter. Now that curve there, I'm not sure where that's come from. That's just an odd piece of curve left over. So that's not exactly 100%, but we should hopefully, if that's gone to the corner there, and it may not done, we'll find out. So if we go into square here, we want G0. If you put G0 in, then it tries to, as opposed to free boundary, it tries to get exactly to that curve. If you put free boundary in, it lets it float around a bit if there's other constraints, but it's best to put G0 in really. So if I go into there, I could put curvature onto here, actually into this end here. So edge 2, let's make that curvature. Got to remember which order I'm doing this in if I have to go around again. So that's okay. G0 here, and this one again could be G2. Now this might be a bit weird. Now it says consecutive curves must intersect. Now I've lost the message there. If I click on the little box there, it should tell me. If I scroll down, it says minimum separation is 0.006, which is crazy. But that's what it's doing. It's saying it can't join, those aren't joined up enough, and it's obviously this one here. So we can simply pick the end of that curve there and just make sure that it's absolutely on this surface here. So I just drag it along and make sure it snaps there. Now when I pick this again, let's go back into square. I'm going to pick this one first, and the reason I'm going to do this second one is because that's the problem area, so I might as well find out, is there a problem still? If not, then I can carry on, pick that one, and then this one here. So that's given me that surface there. And the other thing that I wanted to do here is you want to make sure that your collinear options are set correctly. So 1 doesn't matter because that's just position, so collinear doesn't mean anything there. So whether you switch it on or off doesn't matter. The same on boundary 3 where it's G0. This one does matter because it's saying that with collinear boundary 2, it means that these holes here are flowing into these holes. If I take it off, you should see a difference. It's actually not very dramatic, but the other thing is that we've got there's a bit of a kink in this going through here, and these values here are what control the shape going through in each direction. So you just play around with those if you want to, but usually, the default should be 0.5, and that's usually okay. Here it's not doing too well, but we can work on that. And I don't play around with those too much. I just have a little go with it. If it makes it much better, then great. If it doesn't, then I'm not that bothered. I'll just sort it out elsewhere. The other thing is that we've got degree, which is, let's put a continuity check on here as well. So the degree is slightly higher than I would like, but we're probably going to need this sort of degree to get this to align in every edge, because we've still got to align this into here at the minute. And you notice I picked up a curve and not the curve on surface, or the surface, a trimmed surface. That's usually the better thing to do. Worth trying, maybe I should have done that, but usually I find it doesn't give me such a good result. So I'm just going to put explicit control on, so I've got more control over the degree, and you can see it's now failing on curvature, and I'm not too surprised because it's quite complicated. So if we increase it 1 notch to 6, then it's all right. What I don't like is this kink in here, and I'm thinking actually I'm going to take that linear off. On this end, we don't want linear on, because linear will be trying to follow the shape of this, and actually because that top edge is coming off at an angle, then all of these ought to come off at an angle as well. I mean, it might be that needs to come in, maybe that curve needs altering to come down here so that it does go into an isopalm, but we'll see. If we have problems with alignment here, then we'll do that. So I think that's with linear off boundary 2 seems to work a little bit better there, but there's still a bit of a kink there. I'll try messing around with these numbers, but they're not helping. The other option, because I don't like that kink, and I'm thinking actually if I line that in, then I can get a better blend, I think. So I might actually take curvature off completely off that edge. So now the CVs look a bit better in terms of that pattern. I'm just going to rotate that around a bit. What I'm going to try now is if I go into Object Edit and Align, and we'll have G2 on, and we're going to have Edge on, and I'm going to just align this into here. So I'm just going to break the history that I've had. So now I've got edge. So these are flowing in, and we still got that kink. Look, the kink has come back, not surprisingly. But the beauty of doing it in a line, we've got a bit more control. So I can put blending on, which I'm hoping will give me a little bit of a better result. And I think that is a better result. I can actually play around with that blend factor as well and see if that helps. And you can see that's a little bit better than what we had in the square function there. It's brought it off these edges, but that doesn't matter. Now I've got a history off, and then we can go into this one, and I want a partial edge here, and I'm going to align it to the left hand surface there. Don't want edge on here, I want this to just skew. Also, I haven't got even position alignments here. I want blending off. Now this is screwed up big time around here because I've got G2 on. But what I can do here is I can put vector on and put view on, and that'll just hold that there. Now I'm not getting position here, so I need explicit control on, and I need to increase the degree slightly. And that's still not very good, which is a bit surprising, to be honest. And so I'm questioning whether that is actually showing us the correct diagnostic. And I'm just wondering whether it's an old diagnostic. So I tried to delete it, and it's actually an old diagnostic underneath there. So I've got 3 surfaces. Yes, that's what I was expecting. So let's just try that again. I'm actually going to save this because this is getting dangerous now. It's going to be, just want this to align. I'm thinking this is, yeah, so I had one on there and it's actually screwed that up a bit. I think I'm just going to delete that and do it again. So let's go back. It's sometimes just easier to do that. So I'm going to go into try and remember the order in which I did it. That order there. So I'll do that. So we've got these nice CVs here. The other thing I want to do is I was working in a view, and whenever I'm working in a view, I should really set a plane. So let's set a plane in the view, because then we can go back to it. And we've saved it then. So I've got that set up in that plane now. So I shouldn't lose it now. So let's go and let me just take that off there. And we'll also take that locator off there. And I'm going to do what I did before, or tried to do before. So object edit align, G2 partial, it's not a partial, break the history into that edge, partials off. So this time I want blending on again. So we get a nice smooth transition from one end to the other. Actually, it's not. It isn't. Yeah, I see. Yeah, so it's actually that end is the one. It's at this point that it went wrong, and I didn't notice that, I have to say. So let's just move that edge with it all. So I put in a blend factor. I actually moved that edge as well. So obviously that's broken the transition there. That might cause us a problem, but we'll go back to that. So we got that in at this point. So we're trying to keep the CVs. Let me take these CVs off because they're difficult to see with everything else going on. So I'm trying to keep these CVs looking reasonable. So what I've done by doing this, I've changed the spacing of these CVs on this end. So that's probably not a great thing to do, but we'll see whether we can work with that. Done one edge on, and then I need to drop my blending down. Now my blend factor I've got in there should be probably 1. Again, we're getting this lump in here, so I need vector back on, and I'm going to use the view or the Z direction of the plane, the same thing in this case. Now I've got position influence of 1 on, so let's put that back to where it was and see how close we are there. So the spacing is slightly different to this one, so that's probably not ideal. But let's see if we can if we bump up the degree, that is another way of doing that, potentially in the other direction. So it's 0.002. So if we increase the position influence a little bit, can we get that down? And yeah, there's still a bit of a kink in that area there. Just going to make that, what happens if I make it 1? Let's take vector off and see what happens. So if I take vector off and just use G1 or G0. So it's rather than moving CVs, I could move the CVs manually. That would be another way to do it. But I'm just wondering if I can do it in the align tool. So we're very close on that edge there. I think that's a bit better. Obviously that's just position. And so if I go back into there, so I'm going back in there, and now I'm going to try and align it in curvature. So I'll have partial on rather, blending off, edge, G2, change that down to skew, put vector on with the view on. So that looks better. That looks smoother to me now. Obviously there's some gaps still, and let me just make this into a template. So I'm just going to go and display template there, just so we hide it a bit, and I shall save this once more. Now, because we got that plane on, we're still in that plane, which is great, because as long as I'm in that plane, then the CVs look like that. Obviously in other views they might look weird, but we don't know. But at least if they are weird, like that point there may be a bit weird, I can move that in the Z direction of that plane, and I know that in the plane, the view of that plane, we're absolutely fine. Now there's a gap here, So let's get rid of that curve because we don't need that curve. We haven't actually aligned it to that surface. So this is going to be interesting. This is probably where we're going to have to split this surface up. So if I do G2 project in the Z direction, so in other words, the Z direction of that plane, then we can work in a view that isn't looking down the view. So you can see that that does something quite strange, which is pretty much what I was expecting, to be honest. And we're probably going to have a problem here. This is where I said we might have an issue with these angles coming off, or these edges coming off at slightly different angles. And but we've got a pretty low degree here, and it's it's pulling away from here, but not very much. So let's increase the degree. That'd be the first thing to try. So you can see the gaps are coming down and things. And the other thing that we can do is put some blend on here just to get this transitioning across here a bit more smoothly. And I'm taking it all the way to this edge because there's only position alignment on that edge that we need to worry about. You can see there's angle mismatches and so forth. So I've got to that point. Now I'm going to detach that. So we've got to split it up into 2 bits. So let's go into that. So object edit, detach. And this is where like we have found before, if I detach this somewhere around here, it's almost inevitable that you get this problem of trying to align across a surface, especially when you're going from one direction on that surface, say that's the U direction, and then going in the V direction, which is sort of what we're doing, then you get these issues. And the only way to do it eventually is to split it up. But you want to start off by just gradually increasing the degree until you get to degree 7, and then split it. You don't want to do it too early. And the other thing that we want to do is I'll delete those curves on surface and create new ones. You'll find that these locators won't behave themselves because they'll be referring to the wrong edges. So I would get rid of those locators there. And then we can just go and put those back in. So let's go and evaluate those. So that one, that one, that one. And then of course this edge here, I won't put a locator on here because I'm just going to align that. So I want to align that in position. So we align the position, and it's going to be an edge, and it's going to be partial. This one here into there. If you put it on position influence of 0, it's keeping the CVs more or less where they are, which is the ideal thing to do because we don't want to disturb these surfaces too much. Now we're getting closer, so that's brought the curvature back here. So I'm going to align this end into here. This corner I think is probably going to be quite a problem. So you want to go and inspect those CVs and just make sure that we're not getting a kink in any of those. And if necessary, just I can't see a kink in it, to be honest, but a little bit of blend won't hurt because we've still got to align it in that direction. So this is going to be the key thing, is whether that will align. Now this one here, again, I've got it on, I don't want blending on G2 project in the Z direction of this plane, because that's the plane we've got. So that's okay. Now this is going to be the one that's going to be the tricky one. So you can see we still got a problem, but the problem's come down. The curvature is only 0.1, angles 0.3, gaps pretty small. Worth zooming into that corner and just checking that all of those corners come together. And this is obviously a bit of an issue here, that the corners don't quite come together. And we're talking tiny amounts, 0.009. But if we don't fix that, then we're never going to solve that corner. So that's the first thing to do. If you're seeing maximum gap in the corner, then there's something a little bit wrong. So we need to think about this logically and try and go around that issue as logically as we can. So let's have a look in there. So it's a question of which one do we move. So we've got this surface in here, has got that corner point on there. So let's move that CV onto this one. So we'll have this as fixed, and obviously that's broken the, this curve on surface down here that I think, or trim, maybe that's a trimmed surface now. So that will have broken that. So we need to then get that surface. Of course, that's a template. So let's untemplate that. So I'll get rid of that curve on surface. I'll get rid of that. There's a curve in there as well, is there? No, I think it's just I've got it on the wrong layer. So let's put that on the right layer so we can see what's happening. So we've made the corner of this coincide with the corner of this. So we should be able to now align that again with project on. I use normal because it's so close. And if I use Z, I'm using that plane, which I don't want to do. I could change the plane, but I can't be bothered. So I'm just going to do that. So this should now or that bit will tie in. So now we need to take the corner of this one and make sure that it's tied into there. So that's opened up a gap there to the curve on surface, but that's what we needed to do. So I've got rid of the curve on surface. And so we've got all of those corners should be tied into each other now. So let's go into Align, G2 edge, not partial, and I'm going to go and align that to there. And we'll put on position influence of 1 on. It should always be 1 if you're going edge to edge like that into a surface, flowing through that way. And we also got edge on, which means this edge flows. So now we want to see whether, if I go into there and we're still in that plane. So if we put on project and Z, probably still will be a problem. Yeah, it's still a problem, but at least we got rid of that problem in the corner. So we've got a tiny little angle gap and curvature incredibly close. And one solution is we split this up even more. That's not the best solution. The best solution is to try and either fix this. We've got to decide, how big is this problem? The biggest problem really is the angle. The gap isn't too bad, 0.0015, but there's an angle mismatch. I think we should be able to get away with it, but rather than splitting this up into lots and lots of smaller and smaller surfaces going to this corner, the other possibility is that we move this edge around here, but I don't really want to do that. I think we're sufficiently close so that I'm going to just try aligning this just in position. So let's just eliminate one at a time. So we've got position there. It's going to be an edge into there. So we do that. So that's not affected the curvature there. Let's just see if we put G2 curvature on there. So you can still see the angle there. Let's try G1. So now we've got it down to, it's just curvature, 0.3 something. And we haven't broken the curvature there. We haven't broken the position there. So that's great. As soon as I put G2 on, it'll break it on this edge. And it's quite a small, in terms of curvature, it's tiny, gap's tiny, angle is a bit big. So let's just see what happens if I put, this is G2 with edge on, but you might get a slightly different result if I put vector on. You can sometimes find that it might improve things. Hasn't really done anything substantial there. So I'm going to live with G1. I've got G2 continuity on here, and I'm going to see if I can manually adjust this, which is, something that you have to learn how to do, rather than, constantly increasing spans and degree and so forth. So that located, the scale there is just too big. It's a bit difficult to see. So I'm going to change the scale of that. So if we go into display, here's the scale. So under display comb, let me make that 30 instead. So it's a bit easier to see. And it's saying that, that there's a mismatch in the curvature it says 0.3. In reality, if the highlights look okay, then we ought not really to worry about this, but I will do. So I'll just put in, I'm going to move CVs normal to the surface, or I could actually move them in the Z direction, actually, which is strictly speaking what I should do, because that's no, I won't do it, because that's a completely different direction. I'm going to use normal. Put some mouse sensitivity on, see what we get. So curvature is controlled by the third point. So if I pick this point, it's going to control the curvature that way, but it also controls the curvature that way. So we might find that by moving this, it affects this side, but we can only, learn that by doing. And it is affecting that side, but that's only 0.1. So we might find that we can move that point that way and maybe move that one, which also affects tangency, and fix that side at the same time. So you sometimes find you can get away with doing this. I'm probably going to find I can't. And maybe pick that point as well, because that affects the curvature that way. You inevitably have to do sometimes. You'll be surprised that sometimes, sometimes you can find that if you learn how to do the manual movements, you can sometimes find that it's just one tiny little movement and it's fixed. And you could spend half an hour going around with a line, but in 10 seconds you fixed it with a movement of a CV. It's just learning when you can do that. And it might be that I've tried to do it. I've tried to make this. Maybe this is too much, but often you can. It can be done, and it's worth trying. Sometimes you think this is so close that maybe I can get away with it. So I'm not saying that this will work, but you sort of massage it. So I've got rid of it there, and the values that we're looking at here are quite small. So and the weird thing about this is sometimes the edge point can be the one or the next one along, but I think it's worth trying. As some people do a lot of manual CV manipulation like this. Other people probably hate it, but this is slightly problematic, this one. I'm actually, because I'm moving that one, it's going to affect the angle, but also the curvature. But if you move one in one direction, the other thing is you can try much higher levels of mouse sensitivity. So if I try and move that one, got the thing in the way, move that one that way. As I say, that's affecting not just curvature, but the angle as well. So I've got both things going on here. So yeah, you don't want to, don't want to spend all day doing this, that's for sure. But if it fixes a problem quite quickly, which this one, this one's proving a little bit trickier than I thought it might be. I think what I'm going to try and do there, it's just worth having, knowing all of these tricks, really, I suppose. Let me just see if I can align that in tangency only. So this because we've got curve on surface there. If I do edge, I can pick up that curve on surface. It's so close now. It says, although of course I've lost the curvature on that side. Yeah, curvature's gone off. Let me change that value there. Oh yes, you want to be doing it on this surface rather than because if you try and do this one, some of these, this is like the blend surface that joins everything up. So that's the one to be fixing this on. I mean, sometimes, if the main blocks aren't correct, then you might have to go back to those and adjust those as well, So I might give up in a minute with this. So in a minute, this is going to break. I can tell. I'm so close. We're almost there, but it's just getting that last bit. Where'd it go? Oh, it's down to 1.102. It's very, very tense. There we are. Hooray! And that's the point when you reach for the save as, and with a great sigh of relief. I mean, as I say, the highlights are the thing that really matter. But the trouble is, once you've got these numbers in front of you, you think, I've got to get these numbers down, and you can't. I mean, I can't help myself with it, you know. That so I can now trim that back. So I can't leave this until it says, you know, curvature aligned everywhere. That's the trouble. But you know, certainly in the OEMs, there's people checking services, and so that's where it comes from. You have to, you know, if they see the curvatures don't meet these numbers, then you know the model's not right. And whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, it doesn't matter. It's just that's the rule, you know, in those companies. So let's take the what I'm doing. Let me just get rid of the locators and take the edges off. There's a little bit of a funny going on there. Yeah, so I think there's some, although we've got curvature alignment there, there's a little bit of a funny highlight going on there. So it's weird because it doesn't look as though I haven't seen anything that looks really strange, but it might be that this angle is causing that problem, that it's coming off at a slight weird angle. But that's the only thing I can see wrong with that. Let's have a look at that. That actually doesn't look too bad. Well, there is a funny going through there. And so what we, you know, inevitably with these things, you do all of this work and everything is aligned, and then you think, oh, that doesn't look quite right. And it looks to me as though it's this surface probably that needs a little bit of an adjustment to get those highlights to work. So I think we'll leave that till next time. But it's like the highlights going off slightly there, and then this is having to pull it back. And maybe this needs to go inboard a bit to get us a better result. But it's quite, I mean, it's subtle, but yeah, I can see there's a little bit of a problem there. We might just move on to other things rather than trying to fix that at the minute. But it's probably going to bug me and probably mean that I can't leave it alone and I will have to fix it.